Hello, my name's Liz Rowlinson, editor of Place in the Sun, and we're here today to talk about everything you need to know about holiday home insurance. And I'm here with the expert Jason Jackson from Boshers. Hi, Jason.
Hi Liz, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to talking about a topic that we don't often do, but is really important. So, could we kick off by you just telling us a bit, who are Boshers? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Boshers has been around since the mid 70s as a general insurance broker. And we're based in North Devon in Bideford. And there's obviously quite an abundance of holiday homes and second homes here. In 1990, it was decided that we would specialise in just holiday homes and second homes, starting geographically down in the West Country, Devon and Cornwall. But the business grew and grew and grew, so that we then covered the whole of the UK, and covered holiday homes in the Lake District, Norfolk, Scotland. And then last year we decided to branch out into Europe. And there's not many insurance brokers that cater for Europe. So we decided to dip our toe into the market. Found it wasn't as mysterious as we thought it was going to be, and it's taken off and it's been a real success. So we now can cover holiday homes and second homes right the way throughout Europe, as well as the UK.
Brilliant. So just Europe, but not outside Europe.
Not at the moment, no.
Right.
That's to come.
Watch this space. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, first of all, yeah, you mentioned about it wasn't as sort of frightening as you thought. How does it work getting overseas insurance rather than UK? It is a different, it's a specialty, isn't it?
It is. It's a specialist product. You can't get it on a standard home insurance policy in the UK. You have to get a specialist European wording, which caters for that territory right across Europe. There is there's no dark art to it. It's exactly like you would get a quote in the UK. It's the same sort of covers. It's the same sort of risk questions that we would ask. It's just that obviously you have nuances, like it's in euros, and there may be some little tweaks to the wording which I'll come on to later. But yeah, it's not that much difference to insuring a home in the UK.
Do you find that when you talk to people, they kind of have assumptions about overseas property insurance that maybe are incorrect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've found is that when you're moving abroad or buying a property abroad, there's a whole raft of things you need to take into consideration: tax, removals, all sorts of mortgages, all sorts of different things. Insurance tends to be left literally until the last minute. We get a lot of people who I've just exchanged and I realised I've got no insurance. So the assumption is normally that you don't need it, or it's different to the UK. There are different covers available, where there's not. It is exactly the same as covering a home in the UK. You've got a building, it's made of stone and with a tiled roof, and you get the same sort of covers: fire, storm, lightning damage, flood, escape of water, exactly the same as you would in UK. So a lot of people assume it's going to be completely different, and it's not.
But why won't a standard UK policy cover my home in Spain, for example?
Basically, in a UK wording, you have what insurers call a territorial limit, and that limit would be the United Kingdom, Isle of Man, etc. But it wouldn't cover Europe. So you need to get a specialist European or overseas holiday home policy that would extend that territorial limit out to Europe, or whatever the territory is that you're looking to quote for. Europe obviously covers a vast array of different countries, but yeah, you would need to get a specialist wording for that.
And dare I mention, I know you've only started doing this post Brexit, but
Yes.
how did I guess Brexit must have impacted insurance options, or did it for?
No, it didn't. Again, that's probably an assumption that people might think, but you can still get cover for properties abroad, albeit there are specialist insurance brokers that will only do it, which is why there's so few of us doing it in the UK. But there are markets in Lloyd's of London that will cover territories outside the UK. them. We call it passporting. They have a passport that they can then write business in different territories. So they can write business in France, Spain, Portugal, etc. So Brexit had no impact really insofar as can you insure a property from the UK abroad? Yes, you can. So yeah, it didn't affect it at all.
Okay, great. Well, let's dig into a few details.
Mm.
What are the core types of cover that for overseas property insurance, or of the cover that a homeowner should have in place?
Sure. I mean, if you're using it as a holiday home for yourself, obviously you need to cover the building, and you need to cover any contents that you've got there. So any outbuildings you might have on the property. Some people buy properties in France that have got quite an array of outbuildings and sheds and bits and bobs, stables, etc. So you need to make sure you've got the core covers there. So fire, storm, flood, escape of water doesn't tend to be an issue abroad as it is in the UK, mainly because the properties are a lot older abroad. But yeah, you need to make sure you have the core covers there, so fire, flood, storm damage, and liability cover as well.
Okay. And how does liability insurance work for
So
homeowners?
yeah, so much as it does in the UK, if you have a holiday home and you have cleaners going in, or you have gardeners going in, or you might have visitors going in, they're classed as third parties effectively, and you need to make sure you have cover for them in case they have a slip or a trip, or they injure themselves whilst on your property, and that's either in the home or outside the home as well. So yeah, you need to make sure you have cover in place that would cover that. And we have a inbuilt cover for that up to £5 million, so which should be more than enough for anyone that has a slip or a trip and injures himself.
Um, so what about if you rent out your property specifically rather than just having kind of cleaners going in and out?
Sure. So if you rent it out, declare that to the insurance company. I always say declare everything to an insurance company, and you're bound to be covered then. But yeah, declare that you're renting it out, and then you need to just calculate really how much income you may generate from renting it out. So if I just say €20,000, declare that to the insurance company, and then if the worst case scenario happens that the property burns down completely, you've got some cover in place that will refund you that money essentially, whilst the property's being rebuilt, so you won't lose out there. It's always wise to do a risk assessment for people that are coming on. So walk through the property and have a look. If you're renting it out to somebody, do you need lights on the terrace? Are there trip hazards there? If you've got a swimming pool, do you need to look at safeguarding that area if you're renting it out to families? And then also, I always say to people, give some thought as to who you're renting it out to. You obviously have some people won't rent out to large groups, stag or hen
Mm.
parties. Some people, yeah, just want to keep it for a few weeks a year and condense it that way. So yeah, yeah, really, that's it. If that's what you're renting it out for, you just need to make sure you cover all the bases and give that risk assessment some due consideration.
Okay, you mentioned loss of rental income. I mean,
Mm.
can you you know, can you get that if you need it for if any
You can, yeah.
disasters
I
happen?
mean, yeah. So most overseas holiday home covers will have it built in, and it could be that you get loss of rental income as a percentage of the building sum insured. You can declare it yourself, as I said just previously, or you can just have the cost of alternative accommodation. So if you need to live elsewhere, you can cover that cost as well. So essentially, it does what it says on the tin. If the property burns down, and you cannot earn rental income from that for a period of time, that will cover you for that period of time, albeit it could be 12 months, 24 months, depending on the complexity of getting your property rebuilt.
Okay. Now, there's sometimes specialist features. You've already touched on a swimming pool because I know that
Yeah,
in France you have to have kind of fenced. There are certain rules,
yeah.
and Anything else that might impact the type of insurance you need?
Yeah, so swimming pools are obviously, yeah, very very niche feature, and you really must make sure, again, depending on who you're renting it out to, um, if you've got children on site, yeah, like in France, or anywhere really, you need to make sure that pool is secure and safe, and people can't just wander in and fall in. Same with, like I said before, about lighting. If you've got large terraced areas and you've got some steps around, just make sure they're well lit, things like
Hmm.
that. Do you have a hot tub? Is it cleaned out regularly? What sort of chemicals do you use in it? And again, access to that. Some people have little saunas, things like that. You need to make sure you've covered off. And it's the same with outbuildings and things like that. If you've got other people coming on site, do secure those outbuildings so they can't get into them, or because they tend to be a bit old sometimes and contain bits of machinery or whatever. So yeah, you just need to make sure you've walked through it yourself more than anything, and can see where there may be a trip or a hazard or whatever.
Okay. And what about if your property is part of a community or development?
So these we have a few of these on our books already, and what you essentially have, if I pick an apartment in a complex,
Mm.
you would tend to have a management company that have insured the whole building for you. And then all you need to insure is your contents and what we call fixtures and fittings. And the best way of describing fixtures and fittings is, if you turned that building upside down and shook it, what doesn't fall out? So if it's your marble work surfaces and things like that, that's all part of the fixtures and fittings, we call it. Taps, things like that. So you have to have a nominal amount for those and your contents. But what people tend to then pay into is that management fund, of say €500 a year or whatever, that maintains the upkeep of the property and the grounds, etc., and it's insured elsewhere. But
So
always
that's
check.
key.
That's my overriding thing is always check that and check it is covered.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And what about insuring a rebuild cost and market value? I mean, does that work the same as in the UK or not?
Yeah, it does. It's probably the most common mistake people make is they buy a property for €300,000 and they insure it for €300,000, and it's like, hang on a minute, it might not be that cut and dried. You need to sort of take into account, if the worst thing happens and the property burns down, for example, you need to cover the site clearance costs. You need to cover architects' fees to redraw and replan the building. So they're all hidden costs that you need to then make sure are included in that. And of course, you might have bought it at market value, or you might have got a bit of a deal. So you need to make sure, if you've got a bit of a deal, that you're not insuring it too low and under insuring it. And we always say, some people have said to me, that they've asked around the village, or they've asked some of the people nearby, and they've seen what other properties are insured for, and they can take a sort of guesstimate then as to what real value would be. But yes, always don't do the market value, do the rebuild, and make sure you cover all those unforeseen costs like site clearance and architects' fees, etc.
I realize it's slightly sort of how long is a piece of string, but what about, can you give me an example of if, for example, a Spanish apartment, how much it might cost for an annual policy?
Sure. So you're right. It is, as long as a piece of string, and there's all sorts of risk factors that get thrown in. Construction details, etc., and where it is in proximity to rivers and city centres or out in the sticks. So if you took a typical Spanish apartment in a block and you were covering your contents at around about, say, €20,000, you would be looking at around about £150, £160. If you're looking at, say, a gîte in France that's worth about €300,000, say, you would be looking at around about £300 to £400. These are very rough, obviously, depending on the construction, etc. But premiums in Europe tend to be cheaper than they are in the UK,
Mm.
primarily because, although not recently, but primarily because the climate is a little bit more stable. You don't have as much urbanisation as you do in the UK. Theft doesn't seem to be as big an issue as it is in some of the places in the UK. So tends to be cheaper, a little bit cheaper than if you were insuring it in the UK.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you, are you quoting monthly or annual there? Because knowing how much my
Annual.
insurance is annual.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any specific questions that people who are thinking of taking out a policy should ask before committing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key thing is you need to understand what the exclusions are, and
Oh,
also
yeah.
are there any conditions or are there any warranties on that? So, are your outbuildings covered? You need to you need to query that. You need to make sure that what's the unoccupancy terms if you're using it as a holiday home. So, how many days can I leave it unoccupied? And again, I said earlier, declare, 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 but always say to the insurance company, look, if it's 60 days unoccupied and you're going to be 70 days or whatever, just let them know. And they tend to be flexible. It's not rigid, but you must always, in the event of a claim, an insurance company will always fall back on that condition. So if they notice that you've been 70 days and you haven't declared it to them, they're more than likely just, turn down the claim. But if you've gone to them and said, look, I'm not going to be out there for another 3 or 4 weeks over and above the limit, then they're more than likely just to say, yeah, okay, we've noted the policy and that's fine. So yeah, it's always checking on conditions and warranties and things like that to make sure that you're abiding by them.
What about if someone thinks they might get by on the sort of basic building insurance that the developer or estate agent might mention?
So I said declare, declare, declare earlier. I always say check, check, check now. Check the wording and make sure you understand the wording, because some local developers may have the wording in French, Spanish, Portuguese, whatever. So if you're uncomfortable with that and you can't get it sense checked, then call us. We can have a look. We can look at alternatives for you that will be based on an English worded policy. So yeah, sometimes it's too good to be true, and if it is too good to be true, it probably is. If they can offer you a policy that's next to nothing, because you need to make sure it can cover you for what you need. Because the worst thing would be just accepting that, paying the €100 cost for it, and then finding out that it burns down and you've lost your asset effectively. You can't claim back on it. So yeah, just make sure you have the facility and the ability to check the wording that's being offered to you.
Okay, and what about with contents insurance? I mean, what about if it's really furnished to a very high spec or got some very valuable items?
Yeah. So we have covered some properties in Italy actually that have got antiques in them basically, and you basically we advise people to declare them regardless of the value. We have a limit on ours of €2,000. So if it's above €2,000 as a work of art or as an antique, we itemize it and declare it. So you've got peace of mind that it's there and it's on the schedule. You can see it. So it's to basically make sure that that you declare anything you've got that you would consider valuable, or as an asset to be covered. Declare it and we can itemize it. And some people do that. If it's a holiday home and they rent it out, a lot of people strip it down to the bare minimum, obviously, because they don't want to leave their items there. But yeah, we can accommodate that. It's just declaring it and itemizing it on the schedule.
Okay. Now with holiday homes, a lot of what you've been saying, it might apply to sort of primary homes, but when
Yeah,
with holiday homes, how do insurers define an unoccupied property?
yeah.
How do they, with holiday homes abroad, it can be very different.
It can. So essentially, it's a property that's without an occupant. That's the sort of legal term that they would come up with. So people use their holiday homes for different times of the year. Everyone wants to go out in the sun and then not go out in the winter. Some people want to get some winter sun, depending on where it is. So there is always an element of an occupancy when you're dealing with an overseas second home, holiday home. So there is so within that, there's obviously a period of grace, be it 21 days, be it 60 days, you need to check what that is. And as I said before, if you're going to go over and above that, you just need to make sure you've advised the insurance company. And what they traditionally would say is, if you are going for a longer period of time, is there somebody that can go and check on the property? Is it a neighbour? Is it somebody in the village that you know? Do you employ a company that can, come in and maintain the upkeep? If so, that whilst somebody may not be in there overnight, that tends to satisfy insurers that somebody's going in there and checking regularly on it. Because obviously, if you had something like an escape of water and nobody was going in and checking it, that just balloons into a massive claim because the water just builds up and builds up. So yeah, that's how they would define it, is without an occupant.
And that's just made me think of another question. I guess if you've got an alarm, you can do. Does that some sort of consideration?
Absolutely, absolutely. And with technology nowadays, you can
Oh
get
yeah.
cameras that are linked to your mobile phone. We've had people with very sure abroad things, and it's like, yeah, the more security you can provide, the better. But I think, as I said before, if theft is just not an issue abroad that it is in the UK. So there is a bit more of a relaxed view on that from the insurance company in terms of the unoccupancy period as well.
Okay. Um, and what about if something happens and you don't get out to it as you had planned, and
Yeah.
it's left for over 6 months or something? How does that play into your cover?
So So if you go over the defined period of days, so 60 days, for example, then if you know, then let the insurance company know and try and mitigate that unoccupancy. So, like I just said, if you can get somebody from the village that can come in, if you know your neighbours, just ask them to wander by and check that the locks are still okay, and stick their head around the door or whatever. Check the windows are all fastened still and everything. Check that the river hasn't flooded onto your land. Things like that. Just do a very quick check. And if insurers have got that comfort, then they'll be fine with it. It's when they just, find out at the last minute that you haven't been there for 6 months, and all of a sudden the roof's caved in, and and rain's got in and ruined the whole place. It's then that they'll say, hang on a minute, we didn't know that. You've got no mitigating factors there. You didn't ask anyone to go and have a look. So, they might, and they probably will be very funny about entertaining the claim. So yeah, it's just trying to mitigate it as much as you can and declaring it as much as you can.
Sure. So, what are the most common exclusions that holiday home might, they might be you need to be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So outbuildings is one of the main ones. So some companies get very funny about outbuildings, and in general, when you have the older properties in France and Spain and they've got those outbuildings, they tend to be a bit, disregarded and have fallen into a bit of disrepair. So you just need to make sure that you've declared them. Some people have used outbuildings as a workshop. Some people have used them as storage. Some people have used them as stables, or for pets, and some have converted them into an actual living accommodation or a room for somebody. So particularly with the rise of Airbnb, that's proving more and more attractive. So if it's detached from the main premises, you need to make sure those outbuildings are declared and given a value as well to the insurance company. And then obviously the other exclusion is just making sure that you know what your terms of unoccupancy are. Is it 21 days? Is it 60 days? Is it 90 days? How long is it until I have to get it checked, or have it go back to it? So that's probably the most common thing that people don't read. I mean, we here always highlight that when we send our documents out, to make sure people understand this is, in big letters, how long you can leave that property for until you've got to go back or got to get it checked, just so that there's no ambiguity there.
Sure. And we've got all kind of crazy weather patterns kind of happening at the moment, and from storms in Spain especially, and forest fires.
Yeah.
What about are those going to all be covered?
They are covered, yes. So you're right. I think the flooding in Valencia was pretty bad last year. Then there were the forest fires. There was the storms in Tenerife, which were pretty bad recently. So yeah, it's becoming more and more unpredictable, but the cover is there, and it's a broad brush cover. So if you've got a property in the Alps, you're covered for avalanches. You're covered for ingress of snow and weight of snow. You're covered for. Whereas if you're in the Algarve, snow's not really an issue, but the cover's there.
You
But
never know in a few years' time.
absolutely. So yes, basically the list of perils is huge. But yes, storm, subsidence, flooding, fire, theft, avalanche, weight of snow, etc., is all packaged in. Earthquake cover. You do tend to find in Italy and Greece, earthquake cover is it's not difficult to get.
Yes.
It can bump the premium up a little bit, and it also can incur quite a high excess, purely because insurers and their statisticians have noted that there's a lot of activity in there, be it small activity, but Greece and Italy seem to suffer a bit more than everywhere else from earthquakes, so it commands a little bit more premium and a little bit more excess at times.
Yeah, you mentioned Greece, and I've heard mixed things about people whether they cover forest fires in
Yeah.
certain, I think it depends.
It does, yeah, and obviously insurers have a whole range of people that monitor these situations and try and find a pattern. And if there's a pattern, then there's inevitably going to be a claim. So they need to cover themselves off for that pattern. So, but yeah, earthquake is the main one at the moment that there is a struggle for, particularly in Greece, but it's now
Okay.
affecting Italy as well. Yeah,
Okay, great. Well, you mentioned claim. Let's talk about claims a bit.
yeah.
How does that work when you're dealing with an insurer based in another country?
So it's much the same as the UK insofar as there's a UK number. This is I'm talking about experience of
Mm.
our policy, but there's a UK number. So you're dealing with somebody from the UK, and they have a network abroad, and that network patches into loss adjusters in Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, France, wherever the territory is, and then they'll deal with it much as they would in the UK. So they'll send somebody out to have a look, depending on the amount of the damage. And what you've suffered, but they will send somebody out to have a look. They will get the estimate for the repairs, and they will employ local people to get that repair done for you. So it's not a big mysterious dark art. It's almost identical as if you were making a claim in the
Mm.
UK.
Okay. And what about, within when you've become aware of the problem, why
Yeah.
is the first 24 hours important?
It is. So, and again, it depends. It depends whether you're there or not as well. But if you're there, take photos.
Mm.
It's invaluable. Take a video. Yeah, everyone can do it on their phones nowadays, and then they can just send it off straight away. But take photos, take videos, and get as much information as you can, because the more information you have, the quicker it will go through. Insurance companies love asking questions, and they love drilling down and getting to the reasons why. So just depending on again what the circumstances of the claim are, get as much visual and written evidence as you can across to them as quickly as you can, and it will make the claim process a lot smoother.
Okay. You've actually referred to sort of technology and cameras and people having neighbours who can check on a property, but are there any other
Yeah.
things that, as an owner who's based in the UK, they can actually
Mm.
take practical steps to make the process easier to manage from a distance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have built into our cover what we call emergency flights, and we have emergency flights for two people. That in the event of a claim, you can jump straight onto a plane, fly out there, and get as close as you can to the action, if you like, but as close as you can to the detail. So we've built that into our cover, and thankfully we've not had to use it yet, but it's there. And it's again that mitigation process. People buy insurance and they don't think about a claim at the end of the day. They might just buy it and say, I need insurance, I'll buy it. But actually, what's going to happen if you have a fire? Where are the fire brigade? Where's the neighbours? How close are the neighbours? Is anyone going to see it? Are we really remote? And do we need cameras to monitor the property? So it comes back down to that sort of, I'll call it mitigation, but it's as much help as you can give yourself in viewing it. Are you close to a river? Has it ever flooded? If it has, well, are we gonna have some sandbags around somewhere? Or are we gonna have something that can help? It's little things like that to try and imagine in your head what would happen if it burns down, if there's a flood, if there's a storm damage, and who's around to help you with that. That's the sort of key for it.
Okay, that's reassuring. And what about what are the most common reasons that a claim might be rejected?
So it's going to come back to that warranty and conditions, and part of the wording. So um, is have you declared everything essentially? If you've got a building that's stone and tiled roof, great, because that's pretty standard. But have you got solar panels on the roof? Have you got and have you declared those solar panels? Have you declared your hot tub in the back that we might not use it all the time, so we didn't even think about it, but you need to declare it because somebody could have a claim from it. So have you gone over and above your occupancy conditions that we've spoken about already? Are there any other warranties there that you've forgotten about, or you haven't haven't paid attention to, that have then resulted in a claim that insurers can then come back and reject? So it's basically making sure what those conditions are on your policy. And because fire cover is fire cover at the end of the day, storm cover is storm cover, but what's around it, what do you have to do as a holiday homeowner that means that cover is okay, and not going to be kicked out at claim stage?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have thought about declaring solar panels. Why is that
Yeah.
so important?
Well, basically, how are they fitted? Who's fitted them? So if somebody's fitted them on a tile roof, is it a secure fitting? Could they blow off in storm, in wind? Where does the electrical feed go? Is it next to a fuel source? Is it next to an oil drum? Whatever. Some people
Okay.
have the most crazy setups in the world. So you need to just make sure you've declared it, and then if they come back with any questions, like how's it secured to the tiled roof? Is it a ground-based array? Is it in the air? Where is it? And then you've just declare. You've declared it to the insurance company. They know about it. If they've got any concerns, it's then up to them to come back to you and ask.
And that's why, because people will making little improvements to their property over time, maybe like
Yeah,
adding solar panels. That's
yeah,
why it's important to keep thinking about updating your policy, right? Every year
absolutely.
is or
Yes. Well, you're right. Every year, because your policy renews every year, much as it would do in the UK. You have an annual renewal, and at that time, as brokers, we would sense check with you. Here is your risk. Here are the sums insured. Has anything changed on that risk? If so, let us know. Has anything gone up? Has anything gone down? Are you using it differently? If you stopped renting it out, and is it just a second home for you now? Any changes to the amount of times you visit the property? And we find that some people, in particular with outbuildings, they have a project, and that project is ongoing, and it means that they're updating outbuildings, they're changing rooms around, they're changing the roof, they're putting solar panels in. So it's all things like that. If you've got those works going on, then just let us know those works are going on, when the anticipated date for finish is, and then we can mark our records and check with you and check in on you with an update.
And if someone's watching this and thinking, "Oh my gosh, I really need to mention those solar panels or that outbuilding," what can they get on the phone to? Well, and they've got a policy with you, or can they
Yeah.
get on the phone and sort something quickly?
Absolutely. So we have probably 24 hours where we can get you a quote, subject to answering a few questions. The questions are not onerous. They're much as they are in the UK. Where is the building, and what's it constructed of? What are your sum insured? Have you ever made a claim before? And that's about it, really. It's literally as simple as that. And we can then go and source a premium for you, and then come back, and then we can either take that out or have further discussion with you. But yeah, it's relatively straightforward to get a quotation for your property.
And just going back to what you were saying about rebuild costs, would you ask
Mm.
an estate agent or how would you find out what the rebuild costs would be?
So if you were a holiday homeowner, yeah, you might want to ask the estate agent. You might want to
Mm.
ask your neighbours more than anything. I think
Yeah.
we find, in our discussions with people, we found that they found that the best way. Asking locals,
Mm.
what what their rebuild costs are, because they're
Yeah.
generally similar properties dotted around the place. So yeah, estate agents will provide you mainly probably with a market value, and then give you a little bit of an uplift to say, well, yeah, If you're clearing a site, it's €10,000, and if you're clearing an architect would charge you €5,000. So they might give you a broad indication, but always best to check with your neighbours, I think.
Well, yeah, there's some great social media, Facebook groups and stuff that word of mouth,
Yeah,
and people do
yeah.
recommend other people, as I'm sure they've recommended you to their neighbours. So, how do people get in
Yeah.
touch with Boshers if they want to take out a policy, change, whatever?
Yeah, sure. So we have a what we call an info box, which is info@boshers.co.uk. They can send an inquiry into there. We're a very small team. There's only 9 of us. Like I say, based in North Devon. So we're not a call centre. We're all friendly faces up here. And then or they can call the office, which is 01237 429 444. But either way, they can get hold of us and we can give them, like I say, we'll ask a few risk questions and we can do it over the phone, or we can send a proposal to be completed. And then we can get that quotation for you pretty quickly.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jason. I've learnt quite a lot myself in that, so I hope that's been useful to everyone listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks very much.